When the Apostle Paul was teaching Jews in the synagogue in Thessalonica, he was accurate and convincing. What will help us to be accurate and convincing when we teach?
Accuracy. Accuracy of statement.
We must consult reliable sources.
We have to make sure that our sources are reliable.
Use those sources properly, and reason on the evidence with our audience. Also, we must apply scriptures in harmony with their context, the Bible's overall message, and the publications of the faithful and discreet slave.
Chapter 4. In the walls of the cubicle, there were 3 orifices. To the right of the speakwrite, a small pneumatic tube for written messages. To the left, a larger one for newspapers. And in the side wall, within easy reach of Winston's arm, a large oblong slit protected by a wire grating. This last was for the disposal of waste paper.
The question is, why has this come up? Why is it that we have records management now? We've been functioning as an organization for years. Well, we know that the scene of this world is changing, and we know Satan's coming after us, and he's going to go for us legally.
Similar slits existed in thousands or tens of thousands throughout the building, not only in every room, but at short intervals in every corridor. For some reason, they were nicknamed memory holes.
So really, they've helped us to understand that we don't have to make the decisions anymore. It's already been predetermined for us and by the organization.
When one knew that any document was due for destruction, or even when one saw a scrap of waste paper lying about, it was an automatic action to lift the flap of the nearest memory hole and drop it in.
So we don't want you to start hiding things away, squirreling it away somewhere. Besides, we can find it. We have ways and means. We won't tell you, so then you won't know how we're going to do it.
Whereupon it would be whirled away on a current of warm air to the enormous furnaces which were hidden somewhere in the recesses of the building.
If it has been destroyed because of records management, they expect you not to have it. So if they ask for it and you have it, now you're in trouble. But if you are asked for it and you're not supposed to have it, then and you don't have it, good.
What happened in the unseen labyrinth to which the pneumatic tubes led, he did not know in detail, but he did know in general terms. As soon as all the corrections, which happened to be necessary in any particular number of the times, had been assembled and collated, that number would be reprinted, the original copy destroyed, and the corrected copy placed on the files in its stead.
See if you can identify a problem in the following scenario.
So as we can see, Gog of Magog, which represents Satan the devil, will attack Jehovah's people. This in turn will provoke a reaction from the sovereign Lord Jehovah himself.
What do you think about what this brother said? Was his explanation of Gog of Magog in harmony with our recent publications? No. Let's give him another chance.
I will come against those living in security, without disturbance, all of them living in settlements unprotected by walls, bars, or gates. Yes, Gog of Magog, which represents a coalition of nations, will attack Jehovah's people.
This process of continuous alteration was applied not only to newspapers, but to books, periodicals, pamphlets, posters, leaflets, films, soundtracks, cartoons, photographs, to every kind of literature or documentation which might conceivably hold any political or ideological significance.
In today's media, much of what's presented as fact is often colored by emotion and personal opinion.
During that time, Michael, who is Jesus Christ, will stand up, that is at Armageddon. The great prince who is standing, since 1914, in behalf of your people.
Who's this expert? What's his reputation? Is he working for a particular organization? Does this organization have an agenda?
If the material is socially or politically biased, for example, we can't rely on it.
We know what those people would say.
And there will occur a time of distress, that is the Great Tribulation, such as has not occurred since there came to be a nation until that time. And during that time, your people will escape, everyone who is found written down in the book. and this refers to the great crowd.
Do you think the brothers who write Watchtower articles are living in the real world?
Day by day, and almost minute by minute, the past was brought up to date. In this way, every prediction made by the party could be shown by documentary evidence to have been correct.
Now, in the 3 talks that follow, there are going to be important clarifications in our beliefs.
We want each student in every school to benefit from our most current understanding. How does the schools department keep global curriculums current, unified, and motivating?
Nor was any item of news or any expression of opinion which conflicted with the needs of the moment ever allowed to remain on record.
And we're looking at, when there is a belief clarified, how will that affect the outlines we have in our schools, what's being taught, and do we need to make a change?
It's a change of thinking. It's an adjustment.
The naive person believes every word.
How can we incorporate that into an outline? And that way the instructors will always have the freshest and the most up-to-date materials to teach the classes.
Don't believe everything you read.
All history was a palimpsest, scraped clean and reinscribed exactly as often as was necessary. In no case would it have been possible, once the deed was done, to prove that any falsification had taken place.
We would never deliberately distort a quotation.
The Bible tells Christians to be honest with each other.
The largest section of the records department, far larger than the one in which Winston worked, consisted simply of persons whose duty it was to track down and collect all copies of books, newspapers, and other documents which had been superseded and were due for destruction.
The story of our museums would not be complete without mentioning another important contributor. You. If you would like to share an item with us, please feel free to contact the museum department at World Headquarters in Warwick. Many of the rare Bibles and historical items that are featured in our museums were donated by you, brothers and sisters.
When the earth was molten, its water and minerals were thrown off a great distance in gaseous form. As these cooled and took shape, they constituted great rings at a distance from the earth.
That doesn't make any sense.
The statements of Genesis in respect to the lower creatures rather favors something along the lines of specialized evolution.
Even early in our modern-day history, many were drawn to the truth by the photodrama of creation.
A lie is the opposite of the truth.
Historic tablets have been found, tracing the ancestry of the pharaohs apparently back to creation. The first pharaoh, Adam. Melchizedek is supposed to have been one of the shepherd kings who invaded Egypt and built the Great Pyramid. Its interior passages represent human history. Downward, the course of sin and death. Upward, the law age, the gospel age, the kingdom glory of the church, and human restitution.
Now, on the surface, that might sound plausible to some until you think about it.
It is claimed that according to the Bible chronology, 6,000 years from Adam have already passed. If so, the 1,000 years of Messiah's reign, which is to close the great seventh epoch day, is near at hand. According to this beautiful theory, the work of Messiah in his 1,000-year reign, soon to begin, will complete the creation.
However, the light does get brighter, and we feel that we must follow the light wherever it leads us. Our love should be for the truth and not for a particular doctrine or teaching.
We should avoid all lies.
Well, now, how well would you do in spotting a statement that is slightly off and making it more accurate?
A number of the times, which might, because of changes in political alignment or mistaken prophecies uttered by Big Brother, have been rewritten a dozen times, still stood on the files bearing its original date, and no other copy existed to contradict it.
They were sneaky. Well, that was true back then, and it's true today.
Who lies once is not believed, even if he says the truth.
Books also were recalled and rewritten again and again, and were invariably reissued without any admission that any alteration had been made.
When credible research reveals that we have to adjust or tweak a statement that we made in the past, we do so without hesitation.
Even the written instructions which Winston received and which he invariably got rid of as soon as he had dealt with them never stated or implied that an act of forgery was to be committed.
Does that sound familiar? Why, yes.
Are handwritten notes just as important? Yes, they are. So we want to be very careful and cautious how we handle our records, even if we think they're insignificant. And we get rid of all drafts. We no longer keep drafts. So once we've finalized our document, we clean out all drafts. And the reason is because there's many comments that are sometimes made on drafts. Those are the ones that get us in trouble. But it's basically, we want you to follow the program. And the governing body says, we want you to follow the program.
Always, the reference was to slips, errors, misprints, or misquotations, which was necessary to put right in the interests of accuracy.
Our goal is to provide information that is as accurate as possible, because we know that you brothers and sisters use this information. You quote it in the field ministry. You use it in your public talks. And so we want to make sure that our brothers are fed with the most accurate spiritual food possible. But now you might ask, why was it necessary to revise the songbook? 3 words: New World Translation. Many of the expressions that are in our current songbook are based on the earlier edition of the New World Translation, and they've been revised. You probably noticed some word changes already. We don't say desirable things of all nations are joining us in all the earth, but those precious to God from all nations are joining us in all the earth. Loving kindness has been replaced by loyal love. Now that's a toughie for some Bethelites. I hear loving kindness quite a bit still. We'll get over it.
But actually, he thought, as he readjusted the Ministry of Plenty's figures, it was not even forgery. It was merely the substitution of one piece of nonsense for another.
Gog of Magog, which represents a coalition of nations, will attack Jehovah's people.
Most of the material that you were dealing with had no connection with anything in the real world, not even the kind of connection that is contained in a direct lie.
A lie is a false statement deliberately presented as being true, a falsehood.
Think about the apostate-driven lies and dishonesties that Jehovah's organization is permissive toward pedophiles. I mean, that is ridiculous, isn't it? If anybody takes action against someone who would threaten our young ones and takes action to protect our young ones, it's Jehovah's organization. We reject outright such lies.
Lying involves saying something incorrect to a person who is entitled to know the truth about a matter.
An area where great care needs to be taken is when we're quoting statistics.
Statistics were just as much a fantasy in their original version as in their rectified version.
In a letter to Dateline, the Church's General Council adds that it is possible that a few of the 77,799 elders of Jehovah's Witnesses have not followed the direction that they have been given regarding investigating and reporting child abuse.
The organization has said we've run into difficulties in the past because of the records we have.
So we need to speak openly and honestly with each other, not withholding bits of information that could change the perception in the listener or mislead him.
Now, if they just take the time to check the facts, they'd see that they're being lied to, but they don't check the facts.
There were the huge printing shops with their sub-editors, their typography experts, and their elaborately equipped studios for the faking of photographs. There was the teleprogram section with its engineers, its producers, and its teams of actors.
Today, the teaching committee of the governing body oversees the work of video production worldwide. But as the faithful slaves saw the need to use video more extensively, the workspace had to grow. But the need for videos kept growing. On an average, we're making 1 video every single day. That's just amazing amount of work that's being done.
You think about videos for the ministry, JW broadcasting, midweek meetings, convention videos, school videos. There's so much content to be used throughout the organization.
Our brothers and sisters with these videos are being motivated to do more for Jehovah.
There were the armies of reference clerks, whose job was simply to draw up lists of books and periodicals which were due for recall.
So the research work we're doing, sometimes it takes a lot of time. a lot of effort. Sometimes we don't find what we were expecting to find.
There were the vast repositories where the corrected documents were stored, and the hidden furnaces where the original copies were destroyed.
We don't need a record count. We don't need any of that. It's just a generic. We know that during this time period, there were this many records destroyed, and if you're an opposing counsel and you're looking for something that has a content of this record series, we don't have it anymore because we destroyed it on this time frame.
And the Records Department, after all, was itself only a single branch of the Ministry of Truth, whose primary job was not to reconstruct the past, but to supply the citizens of Oceania with newspapers, films, textbooks,
Insight on the Scriptures, our Bible encyclopedia,
telescreen programs, plays, novels, with every conceivable kind of information, instruction, or entertainment.
But it's very gratifying because we're helping produce accurate information that our readers can rely on. Reliable information will help us make good, informed decisions.
And the ministry had not only to supply the multifarious needs of the party, but also to repeat the whole operation at a lower level for the benefit of the proletariat. And somehow or other, quite anonymous, there were the directing brains who coordinated the whole effort and laid down the lines of policy which made it necessary that this fragment of the past should be preserved, that one falsified, and the other rubbed out of existence.
Since they're Jehovah's enemies and Jehovah's our best friend, that means they're our enemies. How we look forward to these enemies of Jehovah, our enemies, vanishing like smoke.
Sim had vanished. The morning came and he was missing from work.
When it comes to God's enemies, finally, they're out of the way.
A few thoughtless people commented on his absence. On the next day, nobody mentioned him.
And frankly, for friends of Jehovah God, how reassuring that they're finally going to be gone, all these despicable enemies.
On the third day, Winston went into the vestibule of the Records Department to look at the notice board. One of the notices carried a printed list of the members of the chess committee, of whom Sim had been one. It looked almost exactly as it had looked before. Nothing had been crossed out, but it was one name shorter.
And this is a very clear warning for all that would want to stay friends of Jehovah God.
Sim had ceased to exist. He had never existed.
They will vanish like smoke. So I thought this would be a nice memory aid to this verse stay in the mind. Here's what Jehovah's promising. That's Jehovah's enemies. They're going to vanish like smoke.
Keep in mind that the anointed are not the head of our organization. Jesus is. And we hope all parents today raising children will teach them that fact. We get so many little letters from beautiful little children. Why? Well, parents tell them that we're something, the governing body. You ought to write the governing body, honey. And they do. They draw pictures of us good night alive. But they mean well. We know that. Parents mean well. We're not putting them down. But they need to know the truth. Our leader is one, the Christ. With Jehovah's own Son in charge, Christ's followers here on earth will have nothing to fear.
We have nothing to hide.
Do you realize that the past, starting from yesterday, has been actually abolished? If it survives anywhere, it's in a few solid objects with no words attached to them. Every record has been destroyed or falsified. Every book has been rewritten. Every picture has been repainted.
In both ways, the earth is being ruined. How so? Along with false religion, Human society in general is gradually corrupting everything that Jehovah has set in place for mankind. We see it in their incessant nationalistic wars. We see it in their racial hatred and divisiveness. We see it in their promoting of abortion. We see it in their so-called gay marriage. We see it in the gender blurring that the world is promoting. You don't have to be a man or a woman, they say.
Every date has been altered, and that process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. Nothing exists except an endless present in which the party is always right.
Well, with a clear conscience, we can confidently say that we've not held back in speaking the truth about such matters.
I'm grateful that Jehovah's organization takes accuracy so seriously. It gives me confidence.
I know, of course, that the past is falsified, but it would never be possible for me to prove it, even when I did the falsification myself. After the thing is done, no evidence ever remains.
For example, here are some of the articles on jw.org that honest-hearted ones can read. For instance, what does the Bible say about abortion? Does the Bible comment on same-sex marriages? And how can I explain the Bible's view of homosexuality?
Because they love the darkness rather than the light. The truth may expose their sinful conduct.
The only evidence is inside my own mind, and I don't know with any certainty that any other human being shares my memories.
Our memory can play tricks on us, and our researchers are aware of that.
Just in that one instance, in my whole life, I did possess actual concrete evidence after the event, years after it.
We should be happy to have such tools to help other people.
The truth will set you free. It's necessary to defend the truth because in today's world, truth is being attacked and distorted.
False rumors are often spread during wartime. Brothers, this is war.
The truth is invincible.
And what good was that? It was no good, because I threw it away a few minutes later. But if the same thing happened today, I should keep it. Well, I wouldn't, said Julia. I'm quite ready to take risks, but only for something worthwhile, not for bits of old newspaper.
They didn't have YouTube in those days.
Lies and half-truths undermine trust. Jesus trusts that the imperfect faithful slave will do its best to convey spiritual food. Do you also trust the slave?
Serve Jehovah together. That is the earth that will endure forever.
Now let's listen. Brother
We
Mark
appreciated
Sanderson,
that encouragement
as he speaks
very
to us
much.
on the subject.
Thank you, Ken.
Share it.
Now, on another
with
positive
the generation.
note, let's listen
to
as
come.
our brother Mark
Brother
Sanderson speaks to us on the subject. Share it with the generation to come. Mark, please.
At Matthew 13, verse 52,
What could you have done with it, even if you'd kept it? Not much, perhaps, but it was evidence. It might have planted a few doubts here and there, supposing that I dared to show it to anybody. I don't imagine that we can alter anything in our own lifetime, but one can imagine little knots of resistance springing up here and there, small groups of people banding themselves together and gradually growing and even leaving a few records behind, so that the next generation can carry on where we leave off.
From the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, this is
So when you consider the printed publications of Jehovah's Witnesses or peruse the jw.org website, you can be confident that the material is carefully researched and accurate. Why? Because Jehovah's Witnesses are a people who love and respect the truth.
Why is it that so many people are not taking a stand for the truth? You can probably think of a number of reasons yourself.